afternoon. Um, my name is Hani. It's the first presentation in English for me. It's only 2 years coming in Canada. And I'm going to talk about BGP multihoming and failover using VRRP, but I know we have lots of repeated over these topics today. But there is some changes, some difference between this presentation with my other friends. I'm going to talk about what problems we have on VRRP and how to fix it. If I want to talk about myself, I'm a MikroTik distributor since 2011 and a MikroTik trainer since 2011. But my experience is working with MikroTik is about 2005. I live in Toronto, where my office is there, and we have some free MikroTik workshops and events in our place. We appreciate you if you could come to join us for free workshops because we are experienced on MikroTik topics and router OS and router boards, and we know how to explain and introduce those topics with MikroTik. Then I think it's a good place to share our ideas over there, and also you can work on live equipment there, and it's a I think it would be a good place for sharing our knowledge together. My website is wirelessnetware.ca, and you can see more information, more topics about me and my training sessions over there. And also, we do MikroTik distribution on another website, the Netware.ca. About these topics, this overview of BGP multihoming, the first important thing is about why we are going to do multihoming and how to do multihoming, about the VRRP and failover, how to do manual failover, and what's the reason we are going to do failover manually, and monitoring. I have live equipment here, and I'm going to do some tests. And if you would like to see what's going on these equipments, you can connect to the free Wi-Fi, to the test Wi-Fi BGP MUM, and you can test. You can ping 38, 132, 32, 32, and see what's the result over this test. The main reason, the main issue for us to have failover over VRRP is redundancy and reliability. We are going to have everything redundant, two of everything, because to decrease the point of failure. To decrease the point of failure, is, we are going to use dual power supply and two different resources, two different power resources for each route, for each product, for each services, to make it always available for our customers. But how about if those servers failed because of the network failed? Assume that that service, if we have a switch connected to servers, and we have two routers instead of the VRRP over, the VRRP configuration helps us the failover. If one of the networks, if one of the uplinks failed for any reason, one of the routers, one of the gateway actually, failed for any reason, the other gateway comes back up less than 3 seconds. There are several other solutions for this failover. RIP and OSPF is part of those solutions, but we are not going to use RIP or OSPF because of 2 reasons. First of all, for small networks, when I'm talking about small networks, less than 10 routers. For small networks, running OSPF has more point of failure. The monitoring and latency because of the hello packets and the duration of these hello packets takes more time to understand when and which devices failed and switch the gateway to the second router. But with VRRP, we can have less than 3 seconds. In VRRP, when we are using one gateway, one uplink, one backbone, for the VRRP routers, it is possible to set one router as a main and another as a backup, both as a one uplink or one backbone to internet. In this case, we have a switch down layer and where that switch is connected to the VRRP routers. Because that switch has 2 connections on 2 different interfaces to the VRRP routers, and VRRP routers usually use the first section of the MAC address 00005E0001, and then VRID, which is converted to hex. And both are same on 2 routers, as you can see in this shape, this diagram. It means we have 2 VRIP MAC address in the ARP layer, ARP table of the switch on 2 different interfaces. This problem, these 2 same MAC addresses make this problem that it takes time for switches to learn to understand this interface is down and to switch the same MAC address information to the second interface of that switch. It is possible to disable the MAC address learning on the switches. But what if we have a loop on that switch? Sorry? Yes. But in most networks, we are going to centralize all the networks to one devices or a group of devices which less work for us to monitor and troubleshoot. If we have different configuration, and actually with the configuration we are going to do on the VRRP, make another problem for us, and then looking for how to fix that problem. This is another headache for us to troubleshoot and to remember all of those information. Then why we do something and then do another thing or going to do another extra job to fix that issue we made? This is not, we are not going to, I'm not going to say this is a bad solution. This is part of VRRP configuration. And that downtime is acceptable for us to have 30 seconds to maximum 1 minute to have that downtime. That's a lot, but Yeah, 30 seconds if we have MAC learning enabled on the switches. Another problem on the routers, when we have VRRP on a layer that directly connected to the access layer. If we have a distribution network layer where two VRRP routers placed in our network diagram, and if we have, and the switches under that layer as an access router, as an access level layer, this problem's happening that we have our problems, we have connection tracking problems, and fail gateways, which is the major problem for us. What is the connection tracking problem? The connection tracking, as you know, we have a period of time or a TTL time per each connection. They're all saved in IP firewall connection tracking of the router. When a session generated in a router, that session tried to go through, always going through that live connection tracking in each router on a main or backup router. Unless we have the main router up and we have that router, all the connection tracking going through that router, that's not a big deal. Until we have the main router failed. When the main router failed, the backup routers goes up or comes back up, and all the connections, our problem is not appear yet. All of the connections dropped for less than 3 seconds until find a new gateway and switch to the new gateway. But all of our new connections will generate on a new routers as a backup router until the main routers comes back up. They fix the issue on the main router and bring the main routers up. When the main router is back up, the backup router is not down to understand that connection tracking is disappear, or we have a problem, or we have a main router up. And this is another issue. When we have backup router switching to the main router, we have this downtime, which it takes about 30 to 1 minute again to switch to the backup to the main. This is not talking about outside traffic. I'm talking about inside traffic. Inside the local traffic going to outside. I have it here to test. Okay? And to avoid this happening, we understood that if we can move this configuration, this failover configuration, or this VRRP configuration, to one layer up, or make these configurations separate to another layer of the networking, let's say core network. I have to show you this picture first. The first two routers are core and backup router, because we want to change the gateway for our clients. And it doesn't matter this gateway is on which layer of our network. The important thing is that how we can manage, how we can switch these two gateway or these two devices. Then if you can divide the VRRP configuration on two different layers, it means keep the connection tracking enabled on distribution layer. When I'm talking about connection tracking, I'm talking about QoS, firewall, NAT, and Mangia on a distribution layer, and remove or swap the configuration for the routing, and it doesn't matter if it's static routing, even dynamic routing, to the core network layer. And enable, because of the routing configuration doesn't need connection tracking enable, we can easily remove the connection tracking option from IP firewall connections. And configure VRRP on the up layer, on one layer up in a core network. In our experience, and this test in here, which I can show you, the downtime in this case decreased to 5 to 10 seconds from inside to outside. And from outside, you cannot even sense that downtime happening or router fail happened. Okay. The two providers, when you should have two different gateways. Are you talking about static route or dynamic routing? It is important to have static or dynamic because we can't have two gateways, two simultaneous gateways. It is possible to have a main routing table and RIB or FIB to separate it by the Mangia. But you have to have both configured on two routers, main and backup. But on BGP, we can prioritize the routing by MED or another options, another priorities of level of the, let's say, router ID, MED, or weight of that packet, which is easier. And it doesn't matter that route through the BGP going through one ISP to two different routers inside that ISP, or else going to two different ISPs with two different AS numbers.
One router is failing.
Okay.
You have router A that is going to ISP A. You have router B that is going to ISP B.
Mm-hmm.
Or let's say they will switch. So
Yep.
B, right? So if you have one ISP that is down, your NAT is down.
My NAT?
Yeah.
My NAT is another layer of network. My routing configuration is in this layer.
Yeah, let's say you have
And that layer.
that's what I meant.
The providers, let's say Cogent, Rogers, or anyone else, okay? If the provider fail or if our router fail, what do you mean? Which one?
Your router. So let's say the main is going to provider A and the backup and
Going to the provider B, okay?
let's say provider A, the main one is failing.
Uh-huh.
Cross-connecting between the main and the backup. As soon as one of the providers is down, your NAT is down, you're basically losing connection to the other.
My NAT is always working because my NAT is on another layer of network. My NAT is not configured on the core network.
So you're using a layer 3 switch basically to the NAT.
No. They're all static IP address routing. I'm not talking about private routing, private IP address network. And this solution is good for when you have a subnet of public IP address, and you can broke that subnet IP address to different subnets and provide static route between core layer and distribution layer. There is no NAT set up on the core layer.
No, I'm talking from the provider to your...
Provider to me is a static IP address and public IP address to me. No. fixed?
Yeah, he actually answered the question.
Okay, do you want to answer it out loud?
Well, he didn't understand that your distribution is actually taking care of the net.
It doesn't, we don't have any configuration on the distribution layer. The firewall connection tracking is disabled on distribution layer. When you disable the connection tracking, even if you have a NAT rule, it doesn't work. It's not going to work. If you work with Winbox, the color changed to red. The red color means disabled. And the reason I want to divide this configuration or separate the VRRP layer to the firewall layer because of the connection tracking issue on the VRRP.
Can we show the demo that was being clear?
Yeah? I'm sorry, I have to introduce first when I want to beginning of this presentation. A moment, please. My colleague, Carrie Katalka. We're working on Netware together and also 24/7 systems. This presentation is shared presentation between me and Carrie. He's going to talk about the dudes.
It seems like I came at the right moment. Good that battery died. So, dude is alive. We have actually started to fix the bugs, and the dude is alive. It's okay. Everything is fine with the dude.
It is fine.
Yeah, so it's no longer just a theory. It's actually... Well, the guys are fixing it right now as we speak, but it's nighttime now. I think it's like 11 p.m. You can't ask so much from these guys. Yeah, but we just started last week. Seriously. Okay, I'll let you continue.
Thank you. The good thing with the dude is that you can have a live monitoring. You can have your documentation. You can have notification enabled on the dude. The problem with failover, the major problem with failover is that sometimes routers failed, but it is still alive. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. Failover over VRRP works only router died. power outage, router, I can't say router crash because sometimes router crash on some core of processors, not all of them. Some transactions works, and other, the major, on a processor which we have 100% processor usage, router doesn't accept any process, and router crash on that functionality. Then VRRP doesn't work on that. Or BGP doesn't work properly. And how to fix this issue? How to understand, how to make sure that our router's problem caused that issue, or router failed to do it. The problem with router crash, the problem why VRRP doesn't switch, the problem with how failover doesn't work properly, how the gateway doesn't back alive, less than 30 seconds or 3 seconds. It doesn't matter. I'm not talking about a specific time. I'm talking about it. The VRRP functionality, it doesn't work. The VRRP doesn't switch the routers, the gateway. To avoid this happening, first of all, we have to have a notification enable. And the easiest, cheapest, and very live monitoring tool that you can, all of you can use it right now by downloading it from MikroTik website download section, the Dude software. It's easy to set up the notification over email, short message, SMS, but previously it's possible to download the Dude software through a package, NPK package. And you could install that package inside the router, part of the main packages. But recently, because of my friend talked about, MikroTik doesn't have support over the NPK packages, but you still can install it on a Windows software, even on a Mac, through Wine. And you can enable monitoring, email notification, and everything else that Kerry is going to talk about more. But what's happening if the Windows server, the Dude server failed? Because usually we have one connection to internet through Windows server, and where that connection is coming from? From the VRRP routers, which has failed, from outside, and it's not, this server is point of failure by itself. We cannot trust. What we recommend to use is the box we made. That box is I start working MikroTik 2004. This is one of the first MikroTik products, RB230E. It has one PCI interface built in. What I do on this device is to put one PCI RS or serial port. It has 2 interfaces in here, and I can have 4 interfaces for a serial port. And it only has 2 Ethernet ports, which is enough for me to connect to both main and VRRP router. And also it has one USB port, which is possible to connect to USB, LTE, or 3G modem. And also one mini PCI interface wireless to connect to another provider outside. This box has how many? 1, 2, 3, 4 gateway. It is possible to set up 4 different gateways on this router. Even when we failed on both main and backup router on VRRP, we still have wireless. If we fail the wireless connection, we still have the LTE modem. And what we can do to log into this router remote, and through the serial connection, do a serial directly to the modem, to the router, which is failed or crashed, not totally crashed, and reboot it manually to make that issue fixed. And I can present this one and show you it in the, when I have a live connection to it. As we spoke about that, it is possible to have multi-homing to two or more link to the same ISP, or two or more link to different ISPs. I'm going to talk about only one ISP, and how to prioritize. When you have a gateway, when you have a subnet of IP address and you want to advertise through your BGP router, if you only have one BGP router and you want to advertise that network address, that's fine. That doesn't matter. But unless you have two ISPs connected and you have same subnet IP address that you want to advertise that IP address, you make a loop, routing loop. If you don't have any priority to let your provider, which router has more priority to advertise this subnet IP address. To prioritize the subnet, the network address, there is an option named MED that you can set it up on filter, routing filter. The lower MED number, or the lower number of the MED, has higher priority. In our case, we have a private AS number. Even if you're a provider, probably you will have a public AS number, which is possible to have public AS number to another public AS number. And if we have, for example, provider AS number slash AS number 100, for the configuration, we can have same configuration on both router to set up a peers to both gateways, to both ISP, to both router in one ISP, and specify a MED and prioritize one of them over another. I add the configuration for you to review if you like to do the same example. By doing this example, you can have exactly the same network I create in here. The first configuration is going to route BGP and set up a peers. First of all, set up an instance by an AS number, a private AS number, and then number 3 is set up that BGP configuration. I know you can exactly copy this configuration. Then I don't want to waste our time by repeating this configuration. If you have any question, you can ask about this configuration, and they're all step by step. And I can guarantee you can have the same configuration with these examples here if you download this presentation from mikrotik.com/MUM, Canada MUM events. And finally, to set up the MED on each router, you just need to set up the MED for out filter. Then ISP, the provider, decide which network has more priority to route the packet to that router. This is for the second router, exactly the same for the backup router. And in here, I have an export, I have a print detail. You can do print from the ISP router. That shows, first of all, the flag for the route is ADB, means dynamic active backup, because of the MED of MED has more priority, it's 50. And also, it shows main interface is active. Okay, to test the router, I have set up the main router IP address to 38. Does anybody like to connect to MUM-BGP wireless to test it? If you have test tools, ping tools on your phone enabled. It's a BGP MUM. Doesn't exist. BGP Lab. I'm sorry. can be moved to that. Yeah. Is anybody connected? Okay, can you ping outside? Any IP address outside? No problem? Okay, who's not connected to the local wireless in here, the BGP wireless? You're not connected. You're from outside. Who's from outside? Okay, try to ping from outside this IP address, 38, 132, 32, 32. And there are two more IP addresses for the backup, for the distribution IP addresses, for the distribution devices. 38, 132, 32, 1, and 38, 132, 32 to 54. As an inside, where I set up the NAT. You have a ping? I want to shut down the router, the main router. This is the backup router. This is the main router. Sorry? 38, 132, 32, 32. Yeah.
It's off.
Which IP address? It's coming back? Someone coming. You know, just let other people who's from inside and who's from outside. LTE outside. Who's inside? You're inside. And you're pinging? Not a speed test, just ping. Yeah, just ping. Outside? From outside. Yeah, it is up. My dude shows something else. This is the main router. Can you... I'm connected to access point in here, my wireless. And as you can see, the identity for that router is a backup. Now, I'm going to plug it back the main router. And if you check the VRRP, is RM. I should lose my connection because this IP address routing will change, will swap to the main router as soon as it comes back up. And I'm losing the connection of this router because this IP address is not valid on this router yet. It's swapped to the main router. Then if I go to another session here, now this IP address set on main router. And if you check the interface VRRP, my interface VRRP now is enabled on main router. I'm sorry, could you please? No, actually the BGP router is not going to advertise on a main router because it's down. A VRRP configuration is to help this network when the main router failed, change the gateway for the distribution layer to the backup router. Yes. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Which device? I'm sorry, pardon me? Yeah, the BGP, because we enable MED on it. Until you have a prioritized routing BGP router or BGP configuration on a main router, the 38 subnet is not going to advertise through backup router until the main router failed and there is no MED, there is no prioritized MED functionality by MED to provider understand that disable advertising through backup router. Then the backup BGP routers will enable, comes back enable. And then the 32 subnet IP address will be reachable through backup router. Who understand the routing policy change is the provider. It's not the router. Router is always advertising. As soon as you set up a network to advertise in BGP, it always tries to advertise that subnet IP address. Then the providers understand which network has more priority to accept advertising through that subnet, through that router. Then until we have two routers active, the main and backup, the provider only accepts advertising through the BGP router with higher priority of MED until the backup router failed and there is no point to prioritize except the backup router, and then all the routing policy changed to the backup. But the main important thing for us is to decrease this time. When we set up the VRRP on the top layer, the core layer, or on distribution layer. It doesn't mean that we cannot set up the VRRP configuration on the distribution layer. We have to decide between three things: good, better, the best. We still have a good option to have VRRP enabled because we have we have the distribution layer in here that we need to decrease the failover risk on it. And then we should have the failover enabled on it. And also that box that help us to, because of, even if you think about everything, all the points of the failure in your network, we still have point of failure, which is not, expected for us. Then this is another option that you can have as a part of your network. Kerry.
Are you done?
Yeah.
I want to ask if there's people with questions.
They ask lots of questions already. Is any other question?
This one's the back.
your experience is true. I'm not talking about the VRRP mechanism. I'm talking about the issue with the switches on layer 3. The VRRP router understands when the backup failed to switch it very fast to the second one, the backup one. What's happening if we have a switch with two interfaces connected to two different routers and same MAC address? Yeah, the learning the MAC address and remove the previous MAC address is less than 30. Sometimes different switches, in my experience, by testing different switches, it takes less than 1 minute. The best situation I had is 30 seconds. This is the switch. It is possible to have a failover between switches. I don't talk about the switches failover yet. I just talk about the core layer and distribution layer failover. And switches failover is separate. We can use another options on the switches for the failover functionality. Anything else? Switch this.
Yeah, I think I got enough here. I have to go on the other side, though. Oh, that looks good. Hi, as Hani said, my name is Kerry Kataoka. I work with Hani with Netware.ca, which is a distributor of MikroTik products. In the interest of full disclosure, I do work full-time for 24/7 Systems and Networks, which is a network integrator. And today, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the DUDE as a documentation tool. So as an IT consultant, perhaps more important than the IT work itself, it's necessary for me to produce reports for our customers. Most of my interaction is with the management and executive side of businesses. Documenting complex networks is a challenging chore, and with very complex configurations, the production of a usable report can be extremely challenging. So what I've got on the screen right now is a live DUDE screen of one of my customers. And with a configuration such as this, quite often in the past, what I've had to do is I've had to produce a couple of different documents to support the network. So quite often I would have to produce a Visio network diagram, and to make the Visio diagram readable, I'd also have to annotate the diagram. Then additional documentation with greater detail accompanies the Visio diagram. So it's not uncommon to have to use a combination of Visio, Word, and Excel documents to produce usable custom report for management and executives. So basically what we're talking about is a triple entry process. And not only that, it's really a triple entry process, because in addition to the first set of documentation requiring triple entry, every single time there's some change in the network, all three documents, the Visio document, the Word document, the Excel document, must all be updated. So enter the DUDE. as you can imagine, I was pretty happy when our friend from MikroTik said that they are continuing work on the Dude, because it's been a real savior for me. As well as being an extremely powerful management tool that MikroTik has produced, I have found that the Dude is also a powerful network documentation tool. So while the Dude is commonly used by network administrators to monitor and manage customer networks, and as you're probably familiar with, it's quite possible to drill down on any one device which is in the Dude, and you can immediately see the core information for the product as well as for the device, as well as the current statistics. So one of the things that I don't hear a lot of people talk about when they talk about the Dude is how powerful a documentation tool it is. So in addition to the quick status reports that you can find simply by mousing over each of the devices that you've inventoried in the Dude, each device also has the capability where you can actually enter some notes into the device as well. So if we go into the notes on this one, as you can see, I've entered a couple notes, both to myself and also for the customer. And all the documentation that you might normally include in a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet to back up your Visio document can all be entered directly into the Dude directly. So what this basically means is that you've got a single point management and documentation tool with the Dude. So using the powerful network management features of the Dude, it's possible to quickly manage every device on your network. So in addition to using that feature to manage the device, you can also use the powerful documentation feature so that you can modify the documentation at the same time that you're modifying the device without leaving the interface. So this minimizes the possibility of errors and omissions which can occur when you update documents after the fact. So quite often, what will happen when you're out in the field is that you'll make some changes on the device, you make some quick notes, and you go back to the office and you re-enter all that information into your Visio diagram, into your Excel spreadsheet or your Word document. But with the Dude, you don't have to leave that interface, and right while you're making changes on the device itself, you can actually enter in all the information that you would normally enter after the fact when you get back to the office. So that part of it is good, but unfortunately, as you know, quite often, it's not always possible to just say, okay, look at the Dude whenever a customer has questions. Quite often, for example, when a customer is going through their annual auditing process, the accountants will request an independent document which they can take away with them. And the creation of an independent document is somewhat cumbersome, but once you have everything in the Dude, it is possible to fairly quickly produce some documentation. So the individual notes for a device can become a little bit cumbersome. Let me see if I can grab. Something here. So what you can do is that you can go into each one of the devices, go into the notes, and export out to a CSV just by clicking on the CSV button, and you can just collect all that information, and then you can just dump that into a document. But what I've found is that in cases where you're put on the spot and you need to generate some documentation very quickly, I just simply mouse over each of the devices, and they take a screenshot of what the devices, what the description of devices are, and what I was able to produce on a fairly quick notice is something like this. So all all I did was I went into each one of the devices, I did a quick screenshot, and I just set up some bookmarks. And quickly, you can see an overview of your network. So in the matter of less than an hour, I was able to create a unified report on the structure of the network for presentation to management, and they were quite pleased with that. So one other piece is the fact that if you produce a Visio diagram, it's very flexible in that you're able to zoom into individual network components and provide some detail on that. And if anybody here has actually attempted to export to JPEG from the dude, you probably would have found that the result is less than acceptable, because especially on something like this, the resolution doesn't really allow for inspection. However, what I've discovered, and I surprisingly haven't found any documentation about this, is that if you go into the tools section and you export out, not as a JPEG, but as a PostScript file, what you can do is that you can create a very high resolution vector image of the network diagram, and you can export that out into a JPEG file. And if you export that out to a JPEG file, this is what you'll get. This is what you'll end up with. Let me just find it. So I'm just going to open this with regular Windows Photo Viewer. No, that's the wrong one. Hang on. Okay, so actually that's not the one either. Hang on. Well, I think it'll show the same thing. So what you'll find is that by exporting out to a PS file and importing it back in as a high-res JPEG image, you'll end up with a extremely high-resolution image that you can zoom into and see all the various network components in detail. And that's it. That's, I just wanted to, sorry, go ahead. Sorry, I can't hear. Oh, okay. So that's, so the question is, why are my inputs and input rates and output rates not populated? And that's probably just what the configuration of the dude at the time that I took that screenshot. This isn't the screenshot I was looking for, or this isn't the JPEG that I was looking for, but it's a configuration issue. Any questions? So you actually have a couple different options in terms of running the dude. What I'm doing right now is I'm running the dude on a computer, which is at our colo, and I am connecting to it there. But you can actually run the dude almost anywhere, including on a local Windows computer. So when you fire up the dude, you'll actually find that you have a couple of different options in terms of how to connect. And as you can see, I'm connecting out to a server to get to this. But you also have a local server option, which is this button here. And you can download, you can export the dude configuration, download it to your computer, run it on your computer, and make changes on the diagram, annotations, and so on and so forth. And you can export that final piece out of your computer, upload it back up to the server so it's available to all the people who are participating in the network management. So when you have it installed on your computer, it is independent of what's going on the main dude system that is being shared by all the people who are participating in the network management of that network. Yes.
As an MSP, I deploy the dude onto a server that I host at home.
Right.
Then at my customer sites, I also have the dude on the workstation
Yes.
we're using MikroTik as an agent.
Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out what's the best recommended practice.
I don't know that there's a recommended practice, to be absolutely honest with you. One of the beautiful things about the Dude is how flexible it is. And I think that that's one of the keystones of that product, so that you can pretty much run it anywhere that you want. And you know, one of the things I really like about it is that once I've created a configuration, I can export that configuration, cut it off from the rest of it. So for example, here, as you can see in my screenshot here, I've got pretty much all of my customer networks available in this list here. And I can switch around to each one of my customers. So what I do typically is that I'll export out this this Dude configuration, and then just cut this branch off the tree, and then provide that piece to my customer, who might be running the Dude simply on one of the workstations, so that they can monitor the condition of their network. Okay, all right, done. Thank you.